It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Looks like we've got another podcast, gentlemen. We're going to talk about legacy and the impact it's having on innovation moving forward. So there was a stat that McKinsey put out. 70% of digital transformations fail, and legacy systems are a major reason. So with us today, we have Peter Lawrence.
Hi there.
Chad Juttner.
Hello.
And joining us again is Dan Schwie.
Hello,
and
everybody.
So I think we've all had projects where we've dealt with legacy systems and moving people to the new world. And I know I've had many projects like that.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've had a project that hasn't dealt with legacy systems.
Isn't it kind of a circular argument though? I mean, isn't digital transformation by definition the replacement of legacy systems or something like that?
Yeah, but it's there's a human side of it, and kind of legacy thinking, going back to the old systems, if they're still available, if they didn't burn the ships when they got to the new world, that's always a problem.
Can we talk about this word legacy for a little bit? Like, how did that creep into I mean, doesn't that just mean the stuff that you already have?
Yeah.
Dan, I think people of I call it our vintage. I don't refer to it as age anymore. A lot of the stuff. So you think of the word legacy means things you and I did when we started our careers now, right? Like that's all the stuff that now older versions of us can actually get the opportunity to replace. Like we actually get to encounter. It's like time travel. We get to encounter younger versions of ourselves. Shake our heads, wag our fingers, and say, "What were you thinking?" Now,
yeah. So when we say legacy systems, we're not talking about a legacy like what do you want your legacy to be on your tombstone or whatever. We're talking about stuff that the young people don't want to work on. That's what we're talking about, right?
Stuff that might have been this long in the tooth. Like, hey, we've been running this stuff for 15 years. And we do things a very specific way. And yeah, it might be cool to take away our monochrome monitors and our taped down caps lock keys for our mainframes, but our people know how to use it and they're really fast at it.
Yeah, it's like Chad's legacy Corvette that he just got, right?
Yeah, well, I'm calling it now the ship of Theseus because slowly but surely I'm replacing every single part of that thing. And I don't know.
You bought a classic twice?
Well, no, I bought a classic once, but every board of that ship is getting replaced.
Right. You'll have bought it twice.
So that's interesting you bring up the ship of Theseus, because isn't that kind of what like the digital transformation is? You have to replace every piece of the legacy system with like React or something?
A little bit.
Or you build a new ship and try to get everybody to come on board.
You know, I was at Minibar earlier this month. Is it this month already still? And we were talking about this. I was in a talk where one of the fellows his entire career is built around modernizing legacy applications. He started an entire company around it, and he had he was talking mostly about like legacy PHP web applications and stuff you built to get
which is funny to hear them being called legacy.
I know, right? But one of the attendees had a great point. He said, that's one problem, right? That's kind of a smaller legacy problem, but some of these bigger enterprise legacy systems that you have to come in and modernize have completely different, like, technical challenges that we do pretty well at monetizing. And then, but his comment was like, one of the worst situations is when you are modernizing a legacy system with the same legacy people around that system, right?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
the software, the technology, and everything around it is, those are solvable problems. But the legacy thinking around that is kind of a harder thing to challenge sometimes, right? Like that
Yeah.
is a social problem. Like, hey, do you really need to do this like literally the exact same way
Yeah.
that you did 30 years ago, right? Is that still a problem, or is it can we talk about um, changing that whole thought process around it?
Yeah, that's a really good point because if you think about like generations of enterprise systems, because they kind of take that long to outlive themselves, right? It's almost like a human generation. And so really what those systems are, it's generational knowledge that's encapsulated in software and hardware. And
Right.
now it's kind of you have to kind of replace it. But to Chad's point, um, a lot of people understand the legacy system because they understand the thinking that um, willed those systems into existence. And now we have to revisit whether that thinking is still valid in the modern age.
I
Yeah, I
know.
mean, they were designed by folks, I mean, we implement business requirements from folks that build, systems around, their processes and everything else. And if those never change, right, like the technology changes are almost easy, like I mean, the simplest form is a PHP application becoming a modern web application, or
Right.
even some of these enterprise applications that we all deal with, right? Like replacing, hand-built queuing mechanisms with, you know, um, SQS and AWS services and everything else that we can build
Right.
around this stuff. Um, but it's the people that sometimes need to be
Yeah.
modernized. That is a horrible way to say it, and but
Well,
it's
but it's, I mean, it's true. And a lot of those people, I mean, we've all been at clients that are trying to upgrade their mainframe developers to be Java developers, or hey, we're switching over to .NET. These guys are sharp. They've been with us for years and they're going to learn .NET. And even if they, have only been doing COBOL for 20 years, that'll be easy. Piece of cake switch. And never seems to be that way.
I had many projects where it was said our Lotus Notes developers will become SharePoint developers,
Yeah.
and because they do the same thing and work the same way, and
That's almost like an
No.
answer from ChatGPT.
that's yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a degree to like where maybe that's okay, right? Like if I've been developing Lotus Notes for 5 years and all of a sudden now I want to do SharePoint and I'm young in my career, I mean, great, right? Like
yeah,
um, but I mean, this is a Star Wars quote, I think. At some point, you just have to let the past die. And if you've been a 30-year COBOL developer, well, two things. One, congratulations on a successful career. Two, right now your skill set is more valuable than it has ever been in the history of your career, right? Because we're all trying to get off of that. And if you're not
Right.
getting paid where you're at right now, look around. I'm sure people are out there with a checkbook waiting for you. But I think after a certain point, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, right? Like skill sets atrophy a little bit, and
Yeah.
you can do just as well with your legacy skill set in this market as you were ever able to do as a newer developer, with no experience.
Well, there's a supply and demand problem, right?
Yeah.
The supply of COBOL programmers is dwindling by the day, but there's still COBOL out there, and so the supply is shrinking, which is going to make you valuable because and businesses have to be thinking we have to do this before the people that understand the legacy system aren't here anymore, because you kind of need them to help in the modernization process, even if they can't really make the leap to maintaining the new system, which sometimes happens. It's
Right.
just too much of a paradigm shift. And there's neuroplasticity, and it is harder to learn things when you're older. Like, just think of any kind of language, like trying to learn Spanish when you're 40 as opposed to when you're 8. you know,
Right.
it's just
Yeah.
harder.
And I think you're touching on like one of the points that we're trying to address here is the challenges of modernizing legacy systems and replatforming legacy systems and everything else. And that's one of the biggest ones that I've seen is just the people, right? Like not only the business processes, but also understanding legacy protocols and like architectures and everything else. Like it's not as easy to understand as like, like even architectures that have been around for 20 years and design patterns were really caught on, right? Like that's not um, everything was kind of like, there were so many monoliths and so many like self-contained massive systems that
Yep.
just kind of spider-webbed out into the enterprise, and identifying all of those strands is very, very difficult.
That's a big part of the problem, is these systems have grown over decades, and there's really nobody that fully understands them all. There's people that specialize in certain aspects. But I was at a client years ago that had a database that was being populated by a BizTalk application or something, and somebody decided they didn't want to pay the BizTalk license anymore. And so they hired me overtime to build a web service to replace the BizTalk integration, which I did. But it turned out like a year later, they found out that nobody even needed the database at all that was getting updated. So they just scrapped the whole thing. But nobody really knew. I mean, until I suggested they just pull the plug and see if anybody complains, because there was really no other way to find out if
I love
anybody
that
was
method.
using it.
Yeah. I do that with licenses. Yeah, I'll change someone's
Yeah.
license to the cheaper version, and then they say, yeah, my Outlook on my laptop's not working, and then I go, try it now when I put them back. Email versus Slack or Teams. That's legacy. Email's legacy. The
Right.
new world is Slack and Teams, those kind of applications, Discord, whatnot. Chad, you're pretty much off the ship with email. Like, what do you care about in terms of email, Chad?
Nothing. I mean, nothing, right? Like I am it's a running joke now at the places that I'm at that I don't check email. So somebody actually has to tell me to check my email. Hey, I sent you something via email. And I'm like, why? Because I'm right here, right? Like, what are we doing?
I mean, it's good for keeping all your spam in one place. That's what I use it for. But
yeah, if I ever need a coupon code, I'll go to my email. But like, if you actually need to communicate with me, and honestly, Slack and Teams and everything else, it's almost worse, right? Because Teams has channels, but they also have a bunch of chats, and the chats are just like a private group of people. And when somebody sends you something in Teams, you got to figure out where the hell they sent it, and it's horrible. I mean,
yeah.
it's a nightmare. And Slack isn't, Slack is a better user experience, but it's not that much better. It's the same problem, just prettier. I almost want to just go back to email, or just don't talk to me. That works out for me too.
Just leave him alone.
Just yeah.
That's
He's
that
done
people
enough.
Problem.
So when we think about actual like digital transformation, right? Like legacy systems to I'm doing a lot of like really old legacy systems to AWS. And I think Peter, you've probably done something similar on your end, and Dan and everybody else. One of the hardest things that I've seen so far is just getting outside of just like documenting what the ecosystem is and what all the spider webs, all the strands and everything else. Communication between modern architectures and legacy systems, like that is one of the hardest challenges that we've had in a long time. And there's no cookie cutter solution to it. It all seems like
Right.
you have to roll your own whatever, right? So like if you want to make a legacy system talk to something in AWS, right? Like I'm deploying we're going to deploy stuff in EC2 or something like that. Well, you still probably have to communicate back and forth, and then you have to deal with all of the ephemera around that. Have you guys done much of that? Is that a
Yeah, I mean yeah, definitely that can be an issue. I think it's also really important to, I think you mentioned it earlier, Chad, to revisit all of your assumptions when you're trying to modernize the system. Say, okay, yeah, these two systems talk to each other in the legacy system. Do they really need to? Like it's hard to get them to talk together with, the new architecture, but do we really need to? Let's question some of the assumptions, instead of just trying to do, a new generation of the existing functionality. There may be ways to rethink things that are simpler to do in new systems, and I think that can get lost. I think legacy users tend to assume, hey, we have to get these files off this legacy file share. Well, do we? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's that thinking is tough to get around, right? Like you don't necessarily want a one for one replacement of a thing, right? Like if you got a
Right.
bunch of data in this legacy system, well, shoot, let's get that out into a data lake or somewhere like, and let's build a governance and everything else around that so that we can make that data available to other systems instead of having like one system attached to one database and then it owns all that stuff. And that guy has to now start building whatever kind of connectivity to other systems that want his data. I mean, I think that's what you're getting at, Dan, is like rethink all
Yeah.
of what that monolith used to be and just apply um, modern best practices to some of that. It's hard to convince people to do that though.
And
And
that's
it's
where I
hard.
think, oh, go ahead, Peter.
It's hard to make businesses do that because they want to stay 100% active in the old system until the new system's ready enough. I don't want to move over one screen at a time. I want the ship of Theseus to be there and my brand new cool ship to be there, and I'll just run over to the other ship and we'll keep sailing.
Yeah. That could be really tricky, especially with transactional systems. And I ran into this a few years ago where we built a new e-commerce system for a client, and we had to keep the old one going until the new one was ready, and then we had to do a hard cutover. And we had to think very carefully about, well, we had to run them concurrently for a little while. And so then, of course, we had a synchronization issue where we had to make
Yeah.
sure stuff come into the old system was getting into the new system. So those are challenging.
Yeah, and the cutover planning was probably twice as hard as just the new
It was hard,
e-commerce
yeah.
system, which, is the challenge, right? And that's where a lot of the legacy, where where business loses their focus and says, never mind, we'll just fall back and we'll pick it up again later. Maybe AI will help us in a few years and we'll be able to do it then. Or maybe this next up and coming technology will help us. I've seen a lot of mainframe programs that were going to be replaced and did not make it quite past to that cutover date, and they got drawn back.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Do you remember that whole thing years ago when I think like the DMV or somebody,
DMV, yeah.
they tried to just completely modernize their system and they spent so much money on it and they had to scrap the thing because that's pretty common, more common than people think, I think.
Yeah, and how do you prevent the scrapping? Like I'm trying to I don't know if there was ever a post-mortem on that whole process. I mean, there should be, right? I bet you if
Could
we
be.
go out there, we could probably find something. But
Right.
I mean, I remember what you're talking about, Dan, and I really wanted to read up on what happened and figure out like, I mean, there's probably dozens of lessons learned there that we could apply
for
to
sure.
what we do. And yeah, I don't remember the specifics of everything that went on with that, but it was an absolute disaster. We spent hundreds of millions of
Hundreds of
dollars,
millions from what I
right?
remember, yeah.
Yeah, that was insane. Huh. I forgot about that until you just mentioned it. That was a huge deal. That was like not national news, but
It's it's probably more common than people think. And of course, if you're a publicly traded enterprise or whatever, and that kind of thing happens, you're not going to advertise it to your customers. So probably a lot of that stuff gets kind of covered up. But
I've seen issues where key groups of people were left out,
Right.
and like the people that were going to be using it. I
yeah,
built a change management system for a development team. Um, and this is years ago. I think it was one of my first projects I did for a different company. Um, the lead dev for that team and none of the developers even knew about it or asked for it. Someone thought it was a great idea and told me what it should be and what they wanted, and I built it and it worked great. And we handed it off, and it sat there forever and eventually died when the server went down. Never got used.
yeah, the whole
Um,
top-down approach where, the leadership says, here's how you're going to do things going forward, never works too well, I don't think, because you have to involve the people that are using it every day and get their input.
Well,
and
and
there's key stakeholders that may not cooperate because they
Right.
don't want. I was told we want this project to fail. And it's like, why? Because we don't want to do all the work it's going to take to make it succeed.
Yeah.
So good luck. Like,
Yeah.
well, that's a bummer.
put that in your status report, huh?
Yeah.
all right. So Dan, while you were talking, I looked up it was MNLARS, MNLARS, Minnesota Licensing Registration System. And I just typed in Minnesota DMV IT disaster. And I got a wonderful AI summary of what happened. And one of the biggest things that they call out here is scope creep and unclear objectives. I can totally understand that, right? I think we were kind of getting at that earlier when we were talking about understanding the spider web. Organizational and structural issues, rush development, insufficient staffing, cost overruns, vendor issues, and lack of stakeholder involvement and poor QA. Hey, this
Yeah.
almost sounds like
Wow, we've
every
covered
project
almost
we've ever been on.
we've covered almost all of that right now.
Solar panels 10 feet off the ground in highly wooded areas where there's snowfall half the year to provide free Wi-Fi to the city of St. Louis Park.
Kyle, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
Is that a real thing?
that was a project.
Right.
And it cost a lot of money. And they built these tower things with routers and solar panels to power them. And it didn't work. And they just had to scrap it.
Did it work well in the spring, at least?
Summer, July at noon. It was awesome. Yeah, multi-gigabit speeds versus the kilobyte per hour in the wintertime. But it's stuff like, I mean, we all know about big projects that fail, or the sunk cost fallacy, or as I call it, Southwest Light Rail, where you just got to keep going. There's no stopping. It's going to be done in 2018.
Almost done.
We're getting close. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to the IT topics, though. I mean, specifically with the MNLARS thing, right? What could we have done differently? I mean, I'm trying to imagine, because so many of these issues just seem so familiar to a lot of the projects that we've been on, right? And the one that I key on is the poor QA that plagued that project. And I mean, I don't know the specifics of what happened in that instance, but I've seen that all the time, right? Where it's kind of a training issue with your QA resources. Do they actually understand the previous system? Do they know what they're actually testing? Do they know the intricacies and the integrations and everything else. I've tried very hard on the projects that I've been on to get those people like good at what they do faster than even a developer, committing code to the project, because their skill set I mean, maybe early on in the project, you're just developing basic CRUD operations, and then as you
Sure.
get more into the weeds of the modernization or whatever you're doing, it gets more and more intricate. And the better they know the business requirements, the more effective they're going to be able to, grab or call attention to things that just don't look right, right? Like their intuition is one of the more valuable parts of any project.
Yeah. Well, it's an important part of building confidence, and especially like as a developer, almost nothing is more valuable to me than a good QA person, because I don't ever trust anything I do. I'm surprised when anything works, and I really need somebody else to. I'm like, are you sure this works? Like, can you help me figure out if this works? Because
I have tested the heck out of the happy path, and it works.
Yeah.
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 How often do you close your eyes and hit the merge button and then hope for the best, like a day later when it comes to QA?
But so yeah, QA is really part. I think that list that AI spit out about the what MinLars or whatever, terrible acronym by the way. That's part of the problem. But
Yeah.
A lot of those things that AI spit out seem more like symptoms to me than problems. Like scope creep. That's not why projects fail. Scope creep is a symptom of a failing project, but there's deeper reasons between why there's scope creep or poor morale or understaffed departments. Those are symptoms of bigger problems in an organization, I think.
Yeah, and I think the scope creep thing is like really just like we keep saying. I mean, you're dealing with something that's been in place for multiple generations in an environment, right? And there's nobody there that knows all of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So pay your COBOL developers a lot of money to stick around and be patient with all of the dopey questions that your shiny new .NET developers are going to ask you.
Or Dolores, who has an office back in the file room, and she's the only one that knows the format of the files that have to be consumed, and
she hand codes it and puts control tabs in different spaces.
Punches the cards.
Exactly.
Punches the cards out.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. You sit back and you think about where we started, where I started, and where we're at right now, and the amazing advances that we've made, but also the amazing things that are still run in the same boring way that they were 30 years ago.
Well, still, like I've done a ton of legacy to cloud things, and almost all of them have involved CSV files at some point.
Yes. It turns out that CSVs are the universal interchange point between everything. I am surprised. I'm stunned by how like common that is. But also how like fail safe that is. Like everybody should be able to write a comma separated file. It is the universal file. There should be an entire blog post about this.
Yeah. Even on modern like cloud native systems, there's probably CSV files involved somewhere.
Yep. That's one of the most common questions I get asked. Hey, can you provide us a CSV of this data? Can you give us a CSV of blah, 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 right?
Well, people understand it. Like the last gig I just rolled off of, we dealt with a third-party vendor that used this weird format. I can't remember what they were called. And it was an irregular format. It was almost like a JSON, like a document database thing where there was no schema. Every row had a different number of columns, and depending on which row it was, the columns meant different things. But CSVs are tabular. People understand them. I think that's why they've had such staying power. You can read them. A human can read them.
You can pull them into Excel and use the filter capabilities. Like it is. It is scary the degree to which large organizations kind of still run on Excel spreadsheets.
But when you think about most programming languages, they're list processors mostly. I mean, Perl even like named it. So like that's mostly what we do is we iterate through lists of things and do stuff. And CSV files are good for representing lists of data. I mean,
Thank you. Practical extraction and reporting language. That's what Perl stood for. And it was perfect, and we didn't know how well we had it back then. I miss it so much.
yeah,
I
or
So-
still have Perl script.
What do you replace a spreadsheet with?
nobody's
Haven't
found a
found it
better way.
It's like the Tootsie Roll Pop. Like nobody knows.
Yeah.
It's an unsolvable problem because it's so comfortable to everybody, to business users and everything else. You try to build like fancy UIs around it, and you surface information in like we've got a lot of fancy visualizations in our application, and at some point you got to ask yourself, like, who is this for? Is this for me or is this for the business? Because I like building that stuff and I like showing it off and it looks gorgeous. But there is an absolute calling for, straight CSV things. And so like if you don't have to build fancy business logic around that data, man, go nuts with a CSV. It's great.
Yeah. Well, a lot of business data is in a tabular format. You've got lists of customers and orders and stuff like that. It's easily represented in a tabular format. Document databases are great if you're Facebook and you need your regular, but like try to get a human to go make sense out of a data in a document database where you don't know what
Right.
the scheme is going to be from row to row. It's difficult.
It's kind of like the papers piled on a desk theory of storage. Only the person who has piled those papers knows
Yeah,
how to get at the paper
exactly.
that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right, Kyle?
Dealing with the last person's file system.
Mm-hmm.
And that, who doesn't go into a project and kind of make the environment their own, like, rearrange stuff, get rid of stuff.
You kind of have to in order to
Yeah.
feel comfortable enough to be productive. Because if you're anxious because you're in an unfamiliar environment all the time, it's hard to work.
So have you seen people just work around a new system? Maybe the old system is going away, but they found a secret way of keeping it alive. And I have some experience where a MHT file was saved on a server, and that became that group's intranet, and they didn't use the new one. So it was the old one, but they had moved it elsewhere. I've seen where they've gone from a legacy system to a new system for an intranet, and every page was an iframe that pointed to the page in the old system. And so when they sunset that, it was quite a surprise when everything was blank.
Yeah, that's why it's important to understand your dependencies when you're building new systems.
Yeah. But there's the people side of it, I think, is a big part of it. You got the true believers, and why you're moving to something else. We had Yammer.
Yammer.
We had a Yammer community, and people were out there yammering, and then Microsoft bought Yammer, and it just stopped.
Well, this is a problem in my opinion too. Just the speed of technological evolution. I was out on an SDG project. When was it? 2017 or something, and we ended up doing like an Angular 1 thing. This was before, by the time we finished the project, Angular 2 had already come out.
Yep.
With breaking changes, no clear upgrade path from Angular 1 to Angular 2.
Right.
So that kind of stuff as a developer, that drives me nuts. Like, what are these poor business users supposed to do? They've now got this application that's a legacy app the day it's released.
Yeah, and there is no, I mean, you try to keep your ear to the ground, but even so, you've got to use something like Angular 2 didn't exist when you started your project, so you had to use something that existed,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And the path from Angular 1 to Angular 2, while not like direct, is probably at least the developers could be moved from Angular 1 to Angular 2 a little bit more easily than say your COBOL to .NET or
Right.
COBOL to Java folks, but still you've that's a price that's already built in before you started.
Yeah, and on that particular project, the developers that we went into work with, we were replacing a C++ app, a Windows Battleship grade desktop thing with like 9,000 windows. And so the existing developers were C++ developers, and it was very stressful for them trying to move over, and they weren't able to successfully do it, in my
Right.
opinion. And I felt really bad for them. So that's a problem for businesses for sure.
Yeah, and that's the, I mean, boy, that's really the software problem now. I mean, dot .NET gets upgraded every 18 months, I think is the longest LTS. Angular has a 1-year LTS. I don't know what React's long-term
Yeah.
support is, but
Well, you know what this means too, statistically, is that as new technologies come up faster and faster, the people that want to work on the new stuff have less experience by definition, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So you're almost forced to hire less experienced people on some of
Yeah.
these projects.
But
You hope you hire bright people that can learn and figure things out.
Right.
Um,
But
and
experience
do it in a
is the,
hurry.
yeah, and that's great, but experience is valuable too. Like we've been talking about all this tribal knowledge that people have. The
Right.
new people coming in aren't going to have that.
No. And then ownership changes. Who owns this new thing? And there's a lot of facets to the problem. When you have a disruptive technology that's supposed to replace things, and it becomes really popular, and then people take their old gigantic folder full of documents and just dump it in the new system, and then connect to it in File Explorer. Like, what have you really changed? Well, you've changed some things because now it doesn't work as well. Now it has more problems.
But I mean, it has more governance around it and more things like that, but that also gets in the way, right? And that's why they
Yeah.
weren't doing it in the first place.
Right.
Yeah. But then you try to apply governance and you try to run like a cleanup, a reorganization effort, taxonomy development. You could spend years like trying to invent the Dewey Decimal System for your content,
Right.
and it's all going to change. It's a big problem, and if you just sort descending by modified date, you're probably going to find everything you need.
There you go. New taxonomy. Descending by modified date.
Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're that wrong. There's
Search. Yeah.
I mean, if I know I did it about 6 months ago, then I got to scroll a little bit more. But
Yeah. Modified
otherwise, it's
date,
fine.
learn how to search and learn how to click that question mark in the upper right corner.
I mean, that was
That
another thing
has
that
all of the answers.
yeah, that was another thing I thought was going to solve that problem was search. That
Yeah.
having localized search was going to solve that problem. And I think AI is kind of trying to fit that same hexagonal peg into a round hole a little bit, because I mean, you can feed all your documents and stuff to AI, right? And retrieve that information, but is it as good as sorting
Yeah.
by modified date?
Yeah,
Well,
and
and
search is
trust.
only as good as your indexing strategy.
Yeah.
Like so.
Right.
Yeah. Your algorithms. So the trust in AI to do those things effectively and give you the right answers, we're just not there yet to rely on AI to be right.
Well, and we keep talking about AI like it's just one thing that everybody
Right.
agrees on what it is, which
Yeah.
of course
I'm
it's
usually
not.
talking about LLMs.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this happened with the cloud stuff when the cloud, stuff started happening in whenever that was the aughts, and people are like, oh, everybody's got to be in the cloud, but nobody even, it means different things. I mean, it means you can put all your infrastructure in the cloud, but still own all your infrastructure. That's one way to
Right.
do it, but it's
Yeah.
not really any different from your on-prem thing.
Lift and
Yeah,
shift was a thing.
Yeah,
you
the
just
cloud
can't
is,
get to the server. Yeah.
yeah, it's your same, it's just somebody else's computer. Somebody else owns them, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, I haven't really thought about, so for the modernization stuff that I do and the replatforming that I do, I mean, so far AI hasn't had a role in that yet, right? Like
Right.
it's not going to help me solve the scope creep problem. It's not going to help me. It might actually help me solve the QA problem. I think there's
Right.
some applications there for it, right? Like
Possibly. Yeah.
if you can have it, I mean, outside of the obvious, right? As developers, I mean, I've started to use AI on personal projects to write like unit tests and everything else, and it's pretty good at giving you a rough sketch of what that should look like. But as far as solving like replatform modernization issues, like moving legacy systems to a cloud, like it's still at the edges of that whole problem, and it's not at the center of it yet. And I don't know that I want it to be really yet. Like I can't. Maybe I'm just limited imagination, but I can't think of applications for it outside of like um, outside of asking your LLM like esoteric questions about like, hey, do you know anything about shoving C bytecode over the wire and decompiling it on the other end? Can you give me some like brainstorm ideas? But as far as like actually being built in or baked into any kind of solution, like so far not yet. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
see it any different than that.
Well, I think there's a danger too in relying too heavily on at least the current generations of AI, which are, the LLMs and stuff. These are really, I mean, these aren't creative. This isn't creative intelligence. This is just more efficiently seeing what's been done before, right?
Right.
And so that can be great for certain applications, but it can also put blinders on you. And back to this whole idea of, well, do we want to keep doing the things like we were doing them before, or would it be better to rethink this? And AI is not great at that kind of thinking yet. Maybe it will be, but it's not today.
I think that's what I would say. It can reframe previous questions
Yeah.
with more context, maybe, right? But
Right.
as far as creatively solving, solution, I don't think I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. Like I haven't seen it. I use it mostly as
Yeah.
kind of a rubber duck, right? Like that
Yeah.
is right now for me and the current state of things. One of the best uses of it for me is like I will just talk to it and be like, here's what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Help me.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Henry Ford quote where he said, "If I would have given the people what they wanted, I would have given them a faster horse." Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've used it for quite a lot of PowerShell scripting, and
Yeah, it's great for that
but
kind of stuff.
it's like I have to iterate and fix error after error, and then it's like, do you want me to use the new stuff that works, or like graph, or should I go back to use the stuff they've sunsetted and doesn't work anymore? Like, well, what do you think you should do? Like, I need something that works. Can you piece that together? No, not until you tell me.
Not until you tell me.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
see a graph that showed the usage of what was it? The old programmer search area.
Stack Overflow.
Yeah, that one. That Stack Overflow usage has dropped dramatically over time.
Well, that kind of reinforces how I use AI, right? Because I do that instead of just searching Stack Overflow for and hoping that I find somebody that's going through what I go through. It's bounced it off of the AI first. I do kind of wonder what's going to happen to those guys, but that's an entirely different podcast episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's becoming less and less necessary for me to go out there and look at
Right.
examples.
Because
So,
AI is just expanding the amount of data that we can sift through. Stack Overflow has their own database and it gets bigger over time, but AI, like, if you start harnessing AI the way like Google has implemented search, where you're just crawling all of the data all of the time,
mhm.
then having a proprietary database like Stack Overflow loses a lot of its luster.
Except no new answers, right?
Yeah, no new answers, just stuff that's been done, which is
I
good for a
use
lot of things.
I use search far less than I used to. I
What do
don't
you
want a
mean by
page. I will use ChatGPT to do my web searches for me
instead of Google, instead
instead
of
of
Google
Google.
search? Well, Google
Yeah,
is using, I mean, all of the Google responses are AI first now.
yeah. But it's nice because it can serve up the specific thing that so I don't have to scan through page after page. Um, and
Do
that's
you have
been
a,
fairly effective. Sometimes it points me to the wrong stuff, and
so does Google, so does anybody you could
yeah.
ask or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. Like, is it smarter than the guy next to me that I'm asking? How do you do this? Oh, yeah. All you got to do is blah, blah, blah. And then you try it. It doesn't work. Um, he's wrong. Or I ask ChatGPT, ChatGPT's wrong. And then I got to Grok and Claude and go
do
through the
you
whole
use a paid
series.
version of Chat GPT?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't use the $300 a month one.
Yeah.
Um, but I've used the
Yeah.
deep research stuff and funny pictures. I like to make funny stuff, make people laugh. Um,
You
Now
know,
there's the video one, Sora. That's kind of fun.
when we're talking about digital transformation and modernization of legacy systems, I would actually be kind of curious to hear from like some of our BAs at SDG, and even some of our project people, like some of the agile coaches and agile project managers, to see um, how they have captured some of those. I mean, the requirements capturing process is one thing, right? That's a huge, I mean, we've kind of beat that to death. Um, but also kind of managing these projects in an agile way and trying to constantly deliver value each sprint, each iteration, and all that stuff. Um, the It does kind of feel to me like there would need to be some adjustments to that approach, depending on the age of the thing that you're modernizing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not just like this super obvious um it's not this super obvious like, hey, here's the requirements and let's get to sprint zero and let's build some, on top of
Yeah.
it.
Right.
It's this ridiculous. I mean, I think that it would address. I would be super interested in hearing how they address like the creep problem, the requirements gathering problems, and the QA problems. I'm sure, um,
And the people problem.
and I mean,
Yeah.
the people problem especially. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
Um, they all seem kind of the same to me, like as far as complexity goes. Maybe the people problem is a little harder to solve than the scope creep and the QA, but
How do you solve the learning curve issue where users need to learn a new system?
um, I can tell you how I've solved. I mean, I don't know that I've solved it necessarily, but bringing them along early in the modernization, like showing them screens early, getting their feedback, letting them, um, letting core representations of the users kind of impact the design of what you're doing is huge, but also doing it with like kind of a, I mean, you're 90% listening to them and 90% implementing what they want, but like you're not going to implement like keyboard shortcuts. Hey, I used to do a control F7 and it would bring this up.
Right.
Well, this is a web app, sir. We're not we might not do that. Um, and it's I think getting them involved early, making them part of the design decisions, and
having a UX person help flesh that out too, right?
and having, I mean, I've been blessed with one of the best UX people that I've ever worked with in my life, if not the best, on my project. And she did just that. She, what do you think of this? What about this? And there's this, like, every aspect of that she brought core users and super users along for, and me, to make sure that what we're actually trying to build is feasible. Or
That's critical, I think.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I suspect, I mean, we're talking about the people problem, whatever we want to call it. And this may sound a little bit controversial, but I think we're going to find as systems become more and more autonomous that there's going to be less people involved in running these systems. I mean, look at like the telephone industry. We used to have switchboard operators. That's all computerized now. I think AI is going to usher in a new era where a lot of things where we're used to having people do are going to be autonomous, and we won't have people doing those things anymore. So we're going to have to start talking about what are the AI interfaces instead of the human interfaces.
I heard about was there a company that brought people back because they realized that they kind of dove in too soon and they weren't getting the
There wasn't, I can't
results?
remember which company it was, but
Yeah, I
they,
can't either.
they'd let the people go a little bit too early before the AI
Yeah.
was quite at the same level that they needed it. And I think it was a customer service focused
Yeah.
piece, but
Yeah, I mean, already I had an issue with Delta Airlines a while ago where I had to reschedule some flights, and I got it all done, but it was all done almost entirely via an AI chatbot that helped me through this whole process, and it was a little unnerving, but
I go right to the, like, whatever's automated, like if there's a kiosk option, self whatever, that's my go-to now.
they're getting better.
Yeah.
Depending on who you ask, we were at a McDonald's on the East Coast last fall, off the interstate somewhere in Massachusetts, and there were almost no people in this McDonald's. It was all
Yeah.
kiosks. There was
Creepy.
no condiments anywhere. There was no silverware, nothing. You ordered everything, paid at the kiosk, and then a person handed you all the stuff through a window. But my wife was trying to talk to them to get extra ketchup or something, and she had a hard time even getting somebody to respond to her. Like, they seemed like they weren't even trained to interact with humans. It was a little creepy.
There's no kiosk button for extra ketchup, or I would like 6 packets of ketchup, please.
We do have
free.
a whole generation of people that are less adept at social interactions face to face.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to have to acclimate to. The older generations have to, we're a lot better at making small talk. I guess that's what, starting a conversation sometimes requires that. That's a whole nother podcast. We got 5 minutes left as we're winding down. Any last parting thoughts about legacy?
I mean, I think I don't really like the word legacy. I mean, systems have to evolve. All systems, everything evolves, right? The products we use, the cars we drive. So I don't know. Legacy seems like a weird term. Well, unless you're a Corvette fan. But it's legacy. I don't know. Legacy. I don't know why that word got chosen. It's just like you don't say you're living in a legacy house before you remodel your kitchen, or maybe
I
you
am
do,
totally living in a legacy house.
But yeah,
What would you
things
call
need
it,
to
Jim?
be upgraded.
What's your
And a
word?
horse didn't
Vintage?
evolve into a car. Sorry,
What's that,
Chad,
Chad?
go ahead.
What would your word for it be? Vintage systems? Patina systems?
Classic.
I would just say, like, we need to upgrade our community,
Existing
information
systems.
systems.
The classics.
They require upgrades from time to time, like everything does. I mean, but whatever.
My parting thought is you should take the ship of Theseus approach and maybe not replace it in place or in position, but create that new system off to the side, piece by piece, and slowly take apart the ship until it's gone and you have a new ship. Because trying the all at once approach or the big, huge whatever. I think it's the reason a lot of some of these giant implementations of large ERP systems fail is because
they have a name for that, right? Where you try to break up your monolithic system into little microservices and do little pieces. Is there a term of art for that?
Wilt.
Do you know what it is? Are you teasing us, Dan? Do you already have it?
No, I'll Google it. It was going around a couple years ago. I kept hearing people talk about it.
Yeah, I like the way
modular.
Peter
Yeah.
I like the way Peter phrased it though. Like with some of these monoliths, you just have to. I mean, it's like, how do you eat an elephant, right? Just one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Is that the right? The right metaphor?
Yeah.
But yeah, you just. I mean, okay. Well, let's stop thinking about an elephant for a second. But you dice up the problem and create small chunks of workable units of whatever, and you just have to attack it. I mean, I'll reiterate, like, connectivity between things and identifying the spider web is always going to be the hardest part of this stuff. The technology is really not it.
No.
I mean, we're good with that, and I'm getting great with identifying like just how big the thing is that we're like. The project I'm on was supposed to be I think it was supposed to be a year, maybe a year and a half. It was supposed to be easy. Hey, we're just doing this tiny little like modernization effort, right? It's going to the cloud. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm more than that into it now, and it's never as advertised. I think that's a big part of what you guys will see is that it's never as simple as
No.
yeah, just put that in AWS. It's good. Easy, right? Not a big deal.
All right. And with that, I think we could say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.